In the late 13th century, Japan stood as an island nation, proud, isolated, and fiercely independent. Surrounded by the vast Pacific, its people believed themselves protected not just by the sea, but by the very will of the gods. Its samurai warriors, bound by a strict code of honor and tradition, trained for years in the art of the sword. They were guardians of their land, upholding values passed down through generations. Deeply spiritual, the Japanese believed their homeland was divinely protected, untouchable by foreign powers, shielded by the spirits of their ancestors and the kami of nature. But far across the continent, a new and terrifying force was rising: the Mongol Empire, forged in the fires of conquest by Genghis Khan, and now ruled by his ambitious grandson, Kublai Khan. The Mongols had conquered vast territories, their armies sweeping across Asia and Europe with unmatched speed, discipline, and brutality. No kingdom seemed able to withstand their relentless advance. Their war machine was a fearsome blend of expert horse archers, devastating siege weapons, and psychological terror. Tactics and technology unlike anything Japan had ever faced before. Kublai Khan, now Emperor of China and master of a vast empire, saw Japan as the next piece in his imperial puzzle, a jewel yet to be claimed. To him, Japan's refusal to submit was not just an insult, but a direct challenge to his authority, a challenge he could not ignore. The samurai, accustomed to ritualized combat and single duels, could barely comprehend the scale and ferocity of the threat now approaching their shores. Their world was about to be shaken to its core. The Mongols fought as a unified force, overwhelming their enemies with sheer numbers, advanced tactics, and a relentless drive for victory. The coming conflict would be more than a battle. It would be a collision of worlds, a test of faith, courage, and the very soul of Japan itself. The unstoppable storm from the west was about to break, and the fate of a nation hung in the balance. Kublai Khan, seeking to expand his empire, first tried diplomacy, of a sort. He sent envoys to Japan, demanding tribute and submission, warning of dire consequences for defiance. The letters were condescending, diminishing the Japanese emperor's status and threatening war. The Kamakura shogunate, real power behind the throne, was outraged. To submit would betray their honor and the divine authority of their emperor. The samurai lords fiercely rejected the Mongol demands, sending the envoys away without reply. For Kublai, this was not just a political slight, it was a personal affront. He could not allow such defiance to go unpunished. Preparations for invasion began. Korea was ordered to build a massive fleet, hundreds of ships to carry Mongol warriors across the sea. The threat was now real and imminent. The gears of war turned, and Japan braced for the inevitable. The Mongol war machine was coming. The fate of the islands hung in the balance. On November 5, 1274, the people of Tsushima Island awoke to a nightmare that would change their world forever. On the horizon, a vast Mongol fleet appeared. Hundreds of ships, sails billowing, carrying an army unlike any Japan had ever seen. 30,000 to 40,000 Mongol, Chinese, and Korean soldiers stormed ashore, bringing with them not only overwhelming numbers, but also advanced weapons and brutal new tactics. The islanders watched in horror, realizing that their isolated home was now the front line of a massive invasion. Governor So Sukakuni, with just 80 samurai at his side, rode out to confront the invaders, clinging to the hope of honorable combat. He fired the traditional kaburaya arrow, its whistling sound echoing across the beach, a call for single combat, a challenge rooted in centuries of samurai tradition. But the Mongols answered not with honor, but with a storm of poisoned arrows and thunder crash bombs. Explosives that shattered the samurai's resolve, terrified their horses, and filled the air with smoke and chaos. The samurai's code and individual bravery, once the pride of Japan, were useless against the Mongols' coordinated, relentless assault and their terrifying new weapons. The defenders were annihilated, their ancient traditions swept away by overwhelming force and the cold efficiency of the invaders. The Mongols advanced behind walls of shields, their formations unbroken, their discipline and weapons devastating everything in their path. By day's end, Tsushima's defense was crushed, its villages burning, and the invaders began their brutal sweep across the island, leaving devastation in their wake. The samurai had never faced such terror nor such a ruthless, unyielding enemy. For the people of Tsushima, the Mongol invasion was not just a military threat, it was an existential shock, a shattering of everything they believed in. The old ways were no match for this new reality. As night fell, Japan's nightmare had only just begun. The Mongol fleet pressed relentlessly onward to the shores of Iki Island, their sails darkening the horizon. There, Governor Taira Kagetaka hastily gathered 100 samurai, determined to make a desperate stand against overwhelming odds. The Mongols unleashed their now familiar tactics: massed archers, thundercrash bombs, and disciplined, unyielding ranks advancing in perfect order. The defenders were quickly overwhelmed by the onslaught. Kagetaka retreated with his men to his small, isolated castle, but the Mongols breached the walls with terrifying ease, pouring through the shattered gates. Facing certain defeat and refusing to surrender, Kagetaka and his loyal followers chose death over capture, committing ritual suicide. The island's civilians suffered brutal reprisals at the hands of the invaders, their homes and lives destroyed. Iki fell as Tsushima had before it, swiftly, mercilessly, and completely, leaving devastation in the Mongols' wake. The Mongol horde was now at Japan's very doorstep, poised for the next stage of their relentless invasion. News of the defeats on Tsushima and Iki sent shockwaves through Japan. Survivors and fishermen brought tales of terror, exploding bombs, poisoned arrows, and merciless invaders. The shogunate, led by Hojo Tokimune, mobilized samurai from across the land, uniting rival clans against the common threat. Massive stone walls, the Genko Barui, were built along Hakata Bay to block Mongol landings. For the first time, Japan faced a true national crisis, forging unity and resolve. Prayers and rituals beseeched the gods for protection. The nation steeled itself for invasion, determined to defend its shores at any cost. The Mongol fleet reached Hakata Bay, only to find thousands of samurai behind the new stone walls. The Genko Barui denied the Mongols their favored cavalry charges, forcing them into vulnerable landings. Fierce fighting raged for days. The Japanese, using the wall and daring night raids, held the invaders at bay. The Mongols, frustrated and running low on supplies, could not break through. Then, nature intervened. A sudden, violent typhoon struck the bay. The Mongol fleet, in their flat-bottomed ships, was devastated by the storm. Hundreds of ships were destroyed, thousands of soldiers drowned or were stranded and hunted down. The invasion collapsed. The Japanese saw this as divine intervention, a kamikaze or divine wind sent by the gods. The miraculous storm became a symbol of national salvation. The Mongol threat had been turned back, not just by swords but by the fury of nature itself. Japan's faith in its divine protection was stronger than ever, but the Mongols would return. The kamikaze, the divine wind that destroyed the Mongol fleet, became legend, reinforcing Japan's belief in its divine protection. The sudden violent typhoons that struck at the most critical moments were seen as a sign that the gods themselves favored the Japanese people, intervening to save the nation from foreign conquest. This miraculous event forged a powerful sense of national identity and exceptionalism. The Japanese began to see themselves as a people uniquely protected and chosen, their islands shielded by both nature and fate. The samurai, humbled by their initial defeats against the Mongols' unfamiliar tactics and weaponry, adapted quickly, shifting from ritualized duels to coordinated group tactics and modernized defenses. They built stronger fortifications, improved their weapons, and learned to fight as a unified force, forever changing the way war was waged in Japan. So when Kublai Khan sent a second, even larger invasion in 1281, the Japanese were ready. Their defenses stretched along the coast, and their warriors stood united, determined not to let history repeat itself. Again, fierce resistance met the invaders, and another devastating typhoon annihilated the Mongol fleet. The sea was littered with broken ships and the dreams of conquest as nature once more intervened on Japan's behalf. The legend of the kamikaze was cemented in the national memory, shaping Japan's worldview for centuries to come. It became a story told and retold, a symbol of hope and resilience. The invasions drove Japan toward isolationism, convinced of its unique destiny and the dangers of foreign influence. The fear of outside threats lingered, shaping policies and attitudes for generations. The story of the Mongol invasions became a foundational epic of courage, unity, and divine favor. It inspired art, literature, and the very spirit of the nation. Centuries later, the kamikaze name would echo in World War II, symbolizing ultimate sacrifice for the nation. The legacy of the divine wind was invoked once more, connecting past and present in the Japanese consciousness. The Mongol invasions failed, but they transformed Japan, forging a myth and a national spirit that endures to this day. The echoes of those storms still shape Japanese identity, pride, and unity. The storm from the west had come, and Japan had survived, forever changed by the winds of fate and the lessons of history.